Let's get started. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And looking forward to a fantastic and packed day of Torah study in honor of Yom Ha'atzmaut and in memory of Stanley Chira. I thank the SCA and Tanakh Study for organizing really such an amazing, wonderful, and impressive day of learning. So I'd like to start off talking about May 12th, 1948. An extremely significant day. You all know about May 15th. That's what we're going to celebrate and commemorate on Hey Iyad. But just 3 days before, there was a historic vote. And let me set the background for this vote. As you know, November 29th, 1947, the UN votes the partition. And this was accepted by the Zionists and celebrated in the streets and rejected by the Arabs. And so from that time after, they are fighting in the streets, all the way from Hebron to Haifa. And now the Jewish nation has to make a critical decision about how or what it's going to do. Does the UN partition plan still hold, even though the UN backed off from it and is not doing anything to implement it? And so in the months and then days before the end of the British mandate, there was a critical decision to be made. And here's some of the background. The CIA published a report just a few months in 1947. It says as follows: the Jewish forces will initially have the advantage. However, as the Arabs gradually coordinate their war effort, the Jews will be forced to withdraw from isolated positions, and having been drawn to a war of attrition, will gradually be defeated. Unless they're able to attain significant outside aid in terms of manpower and material, the Jews will be able to hold out for no longer than 2 years. That's what the CIA said. If we look at the Jewish leadership itself, said very much the same thing. One of my personal heroes, Yigal Yadin, he was the IDF chief of staff. And he was asked, what do you think about going to war? And this now is going to be a war not only with Arabs in Palestine, but the threat was, and what really happened was the other countries decided to join, Iraq and Egypt, and then even Jordan. And so this was a much bigger war than they were faced with the months before. And so the IDF chief of staff, Yigal Yadin, he was asked, what do you think about our chances, the Jewish chances of winning this war? And he said, the chances are very much equal. But then he continued, if I'm to be candid, the enemy's advantage is large if they bring all their fighting forces to bear. And so David Ben-Gurion and the leadership, his ministers, had to make a critical decision whether to declare a state on May 15th or whether to delay. And the argument to delay was that there'll be a truce, a peace treaty brokered by the United States, the United Nations, and everybody would put their arms down. And then they would take the next months figuring out what this would look like, whether it would be a UN trusteeship or whatever it would be. And the chances of the going to war is a huge risk because according to all calculations, both of the CIA and the IDF chief of staff, is that Israel had a low chance of winning this war. The United States Secretary of State, George Marshall, was a skeptic about the Jewish state in general, and he advised the Israel not to declare a state. And he said the United States, he told Truman, the United States will not come to Israel's backing should they declare a state and a war happen, and they may need them. And so with all that in mind, I want to try to if you could picture yourself being in a cabinet meeting, and this was a 13-hour cabinet meeting on May 12th with David Ben-Gurion and 10 of the top ministers. And they had to vote to decide whether they would declare a state and thereby launch a all-out war. Well, they're not launching it, but it would prompt the Arabs to launch an all-out war against them, or whether not to declare a state and hold on, accept a peace treaty, if it would even be really kept, and wait to live another day and figure out the best way forward. So I'm curious about your reaction, and perhaps by a show of hands, who would vote to declare a state on, if just imagine you were there. I know you know the outcome, but imagine you were there, and if you could show yourself so I could see your vote, who would vote to declare a state on May 15th? Okay, who would vote to delay and not declare a state?
I guess I would say that. All right.
All right, looks like we have about half and half here. Well, I'm not going to tell you the results of that vote until the end of the class. That way, make sure you stay. Okay, but just keep that in mind, and you know what a risk that was, and in some ways, you know, can you imagine, Shalom, if they had failed, what an irresponsible vote it would be if everybody is telling you this is a bad idea, and you go ahead and vote anyway. I mean, you know, those leaders would go down in history as being responsible for potentially what could have been a terrible massacre and defeat. Okay, keep that in mind, and I want to jump back 2,000 years to the time of Bar Kokhba. And there's one of these people is related in both, because Yigal Yadin, who was not only the IDF chief of staff, but also my favorite archaeologist. When he wasn't busy fighting Israel's wars, he was going around digging in the Judean desert. And he was digging around in one of the Bar Kokhba tunnels. I'm sure most of you have been in some of those tunnels. And one day he found a stack of letters from Bar Kokhba himself, written by him and his people, and written to him, all tied up in twine, ready for him to open it up and read it. And so if we think back to the time of Bar Kokhba, and here we're under the Romans, and things are not very good. So several Roman local governors are extremely mean, anti-Semitic. Some are more fair. And the idea is, should we declare a state? And should we fight against the powerful forces of the Romans? Is this a good idea? Or should we lay low, just follow their rules? And you know, we can still keep our religion and keep things going as they were. The Bet HaMikdash was destroyed 60 years beforehand, and now we're in the year 130. Should we lay low and keep the rules of the international rules that the Romans are giving us, or should we go and fight? And a quick vote. Who would decide to go and fight against the Romans in the year 130? Okay, we have a few. Who would decide, no, don't fight, right? The chances are we're going to lose this war. Okay, good. All right, everybody's fantastic a Monday morning quarterback, because you know what happened there too. But I want to bring these two events together because there are a lot of similarities. And the result was completely different in each. And so how do you know which way to decide in each case? Because no matter what you do, the consequences are drastic and dire and historic. Okay, with all that in mind, I'd like to share my screen with you and look at a few sources from the Bar Kokhba revolt. Here we go, and this is a section from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel's Torah Min Hashamayim, which we've been studying every Sunday morning for the past couple of years. And this chapter, which we happen to be up to, is directly relevant to our question. The chapter is called Ketz HaPelaot, right? The miracles at the end of days. And here we see that Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva represent two different schools of thought regarding this very question. And so let's read a bit together and trace some of their sources, and we'll see how significant they are back then and also till today. Rabbi Ishmael, Rabbi Ishmael was like a slow trickling stream of the waters of the Siloam River. Rabbi Akiva was like a torrential stream. Rabbi Ishmael's qualities were modesty, punctiliousness, restraint and caution, moderation and patience. By contrast, Rabbi Akiva was all yearning and striving, insatiable appetite, unquenchable thirst. צר היה לו רבי עקיבא מקום בתחומי הבנה נתונה בפשוטו של מקרא, בתחומי השגת אלוקים הבא באמונת קבלת עול מלכותו, וצר מקום במסגרת ההיסטוריה. For Rabbi Akiva, if you follow only the plain sense of the text, only the pshat, it's too constraining. He had so many more ideas, and so he was very creative in his midrashic interpretive stance. And if he just plain faith and obedience to mitzvot, essential, but not enough for him. He had mystical longings. And the historical process was not, he was too impatient to wait for things to just happen on their own. He wanted to seize the day and make things happen. The burden of exile he had no patience for. Mayim rabim lo yichlu lechavot et ahava, pasuk you all know from Shir HaShirim, and that was Rabbi Akiva's favorite book. He called that book Kodesh Kodashim, and so he said the great love could not, even great waters could not extinguish his passion and his love for Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Avav dibra navim nimrasim v'yitmatmea chakelo lo hirvu et kisufei nafsho ligula bimhera. The words that Habakkuk says, if he tarries, you should wait for him. Everybody knows that from the song, right? Even if the Mashiach tarries, wait for him. That's a pasuk from Habakkuk. But Rabbi Akiva was too impatient for that, and that did not calm his soul. It's well known that at the end of days, Haket Satum Mechusem Ben Adam, nobody knows when they will be. But Rabbi Akiva hetzitz ma'achorei pargod bechriz sheyemei Mashiach memashmeshim ubaim shacharit hayamim kerova lavo. Rabbi Akiva peeked from behind the curtain, a way of saying in his mystical vision, he was able to figure out when it would be. And he said that Mashiach is coming now, and his day, and he saw that in the person in the leadership of Bar Kokhba. And so he said, he quoted a different pasuk from Haggai, right? That said, just a little while, I am bringing an earthquake to heaven and earth and changing everything. And because of his great influence, he was able to now take advantage of the spark of the fire that had started of the rebellion that under the leadership of Bar Kokhba. His student, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the famous one who was in the cave for 13 years, says, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Hayadoresh, Barach Kochab Miyakov, the pasuk that Bil'am says, that there will be a star will come from Jacob, a star that will be the leader, that will be the Mashiach. Who is this Kochav? It is Kokhba Miyakov. His name was Shimon Bar Kokhba, and he was given the nickname Bar Kokhba based on this pasuk, perhaps by Rabbi Akiva himself. And so when he saw Bar Kokhba, Rabbi Akiva would say, this is the Melech Mashiach. However, not all of his colleagues agreed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Torta amar lo, Akiva, ya'alu asavim b'lchayayich, ve'adayin ben David lo yavo. Rabbi Yochanan says, sorry, Rabbi Akiva, he is not the Mashiach. And you're going to be, the grass will be growing from your cheeks, and Mashiach will not have come. In other words, you're going to be dead and buried. You're going to be pushing up daisies. Grass will be growing from your body. And this is not Mashiach. This is not the time yet. And so we see Rabbi Akiva being such a very strong and influential figure. His martyrdom in that very war that he supported is famous and inspiring till today. But there's another point of view. Rabbi Akiva emphasized that the end of days is not known. Nobody in the world can know when it will be. According to the Mechilta, which is the book of interpretation of Rabbi Ishmael of Sefer Shemot, says Shiva devarim mechusim b'nei Adam Elohen Yom Hamitah Yom Hanechama Omek Hadin Ve'en Adam Yodea B'ma Mistaker. No one knows the day they will die. No one knows how judgment works, like we were talking about just before. And nobody knows what their livelihood will be. En Adam Yodea Ma B'libo Shech. No one knows what each other are thinking. Malchut Bet David ematai tachzor limkoma, Malchut Chayevet ematai ta'aked. And finally, nobody knows when the house of David will be restored, and nobody knows when the terrible kingdom of Romans will be destroyed. It's not up to us to know. We have to simply be patient and understand that this is the time of Rome to be ascendant. And God has ordained that this should be their time, and we'll wait it out, right, patiently. The God who will protect Israel is also protecting and thinking about when the end will be. And so to be Ishmael interprets, Hashem v'yishmerecha. What does that mean? God will watch out for when it's time. It's up to Hashem to bring about the redemption, to bring about the end of days. It's not up to us. And the sages from all schools, they're always looking to the Tanakh to find parallels to things that are happening in their own time, just as we do today. And one major event, well, maybe not so major, but a very important event that they looked at and was saw as relevant is the tribe of Ephraim. And according to Midrash, based on some Pesukim and Dirayim and Tehillim, Ephraim, when they were in Egypt enslaved, they managed to escape. And Ephraim, they made their calculation about when the end of days should be, and they said it should be now, and they escaped Egypt before everybody else, way before the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and they went to Israel. But they were defeated when they got there because it was not the time. Right? Hashem had ordained that they're going to be in Egypt as slaves for 400 years, and that time had not come. And therefore, they were not permitted, and they failed. And so these are the people. Interestingly, we mentioned last week, we had a class on Yechezkel's dry bones that he revived. And one opinion in Talmud says, who were the people that he revived? And says it was the Bnei Ephraim that went to war. They were the ones that were revived. So let's see how they explain, how each of the schools explain this story. Rabbi Akiva, Tashuba Ketav, Chil Ahaz Yoshebe Pelashet. The people that are in Pelashet, the Pelishtim, the people in Eretz Canaan, they were afraid when they heard about Kiryat Yamsuf and they heard about the salvation of the Israelite people. And what did they say? They said, oh, now they're coming to take revenge against what we did to the tribe of Ephraim. And that's how they said it in the school of Rabbi Akiva, right? However, in the school of Rabbi Ishmael, they added a few words, but stinging words. They said, now they are afraid in Canaan because al she'avru al haketz ve'al hashivua. They said Israel is going to come and take revenge against what we did to Ephraim, and those are the people, the Ephraimites, that they violated the end of days, and they violated the promise, the swear. Well, let's see what this is in order to figure out what this is. This midrash is referring to a very famous Talmud and midrash that is here. It's found in Masechet Ketubot. It says that Rabbi Zera says that there are 3 oaths. Right? This is going on Shir HaShirim. So interesting because Rabbi Akiva, that's his favorite book, is Shir HaShirim. But in Shir HaShirim, it also says Hishpati etchem benot Yerushalayim im ta'iru im ta'oreru et ahava. Right, and it's the lover saying, I beseech you, I give you an oath at not to arouse the love before its time. As a mashal, you can think of it as perhaps someone deciding to propose to his someone he's beloved on the second date. The other side isn't ready, right? If the other side isn't ready, you can't do it. Or maybe more pertinent, if there's a breakup between a couple and the one's very angry, and you can't just go and say sorry the next day. You got to take time until they are ready to accept it. And so to Bnei Israel and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there was a break, a historic break, went into exile. And you can't just come back before HaKadosh Baruch Hu says he is ready to bring you back. And so it won't work before that. And so these are the 3 oaths. 3 times it says in Shir HaShirim, Mishpati Etchem. And the first oath is that Israel should not ascend to Israel all together. One by one, a few people can go and make Aliyah. There were always people, a few individuals that lived in Israel, but they should not be there. They should not all come en masse. And second, that they should not rebel against the nations of the world. They should not make a war against Rome or against the Ottomans or whoever is in charge. This should not be done by war. The Jewish people should stay low and wait. I think this is really important and interesting because it's this strategy that has allowed the Jewish people to survive these 2,000 years. In whatever country they were in, wherever they were always loyal citizens. They supported the government, even if it was a terrible government, and even if they didn't like what was going on. That's how they survived. They stayed close to the seats of power, and they just got by from year after year. Sometimes kicked out, sometimes persecuted, but most of the time just being good citizens. And this was a really important strategy. If they had, every time they didn't like something, went out and started a war, they would not have lasted. And so you see that the Rabbi Ishmael's advice was very good and very important advice. Okay, so we have here Rabbi Yosef ben Chalafta, שהרבה דברים היה קרוב לדעתו של רבי ישמעאל, הוראה הנותן את הכס, אין לו חלק עולם הבא. Until the point that some rabbis had to give strict warnings against calculating the end of days. Why is that so important? Because they saw what happened in 70 CE, how the Jews tried to rebel and they were destroyed, the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. Bar Kokhba tried again with dire consequences. Thousands and thousands of Jews were killed, and the rest of the consequences of not being able to live in the south in Judea, another persecution that plagued the Jewish people for many decades. They saw, they learned, they were traumatized, and so they said, it's dangerous. Anyone who's going to try to say, Mashiach is here now, let's make a move, let's go and make war, this is not going to end well. And so their advice was, don't try to calculate when the end will be. Rabbi Natan Omed, Mikra ze nokev yored ad tehom. This is an amazing and beautiful midrash, and I'll show it to you in the original in Masechet Sanhedrin. Rabbi Natan says the following verse penetrates and descends into the depths from Chabakuk. Ki od lachazon lamoed yafeach laketz velo yichazer im yitmahmea hakelo. Right, the prophecy will come at its right time, but you have to wait for it. And it will not be delayed at all, but as long as you're patient. Okay, so that's the pasuk that we quoted earlier, right? That's what Rabbi Natan taught. And not like the other sages. They said, Ad idan idanin uflag idan. That's a pasuk from Daniel, and that was understood in medieval times to mean that the time period until the end of days will be 3.5 times the length of time we were in Egypt. So in Egypt for 400 years, you'd multiply that by 3.5. Or maybe we're in Egypt for 200 years, 210 years, and you multiply that. And in every generation, people made different kinds of calculations to figure out when the end of days would be. But Rabbi Natan rejected this. Rabbi Simlai, he used to quote another pasuk in Tehillim. It says, Shalish, so it'll be 3 times the amount of time we're in exile. He rejects that. And not like Rabbi Akiva that said, Odachat mat v'hi ve'ani mar'ish et hashamayim va'aretz. Rabbi Akiva said, no calculations happening right now. Rabbi Natan rejected that as well. All of these calculations are very difficult and very dangerous. And so probably the majority of rabbis viewed it that way. And Harambam famously, right, in the letter of astrology, he says, don't try to calculate the end, it's not a good idea. And then he says, oh, but I actually have a family tradition and I have my own calculation. Okay, but then we see that all the people that did calculate the end throughout history in every generation, they were all wrong because it didn't happen when they said it was going to be. Okay, and that follows the school of Rabbi Ishmael again. Okay, we're almost finished with this chapter, and then we'll get back to the discussion. Bishat Hirum Zor Keshechelek Gadol Shelam Labash Kina Bechashav Machshavot Lifrok Ol Malchut Me'al Savarehem Ulasig Chosen Leumi Bechezkat Hayad At this time of tremendous pressure and emergency, when there was a large group of zealots who wanted to remove them from themselves the weight, the yoke of the Roman Empire. The different views of these two sages diverged. Rabbi Akiva, he decided with those sages to encourage a rebellion. Rabbi Akiva, he voted שהזהירו מפני התגרות ברומאים והטיפו להיכנע לגזרות המלכות בתחום הפעולות שבפרהסיה שיעבוד הזעם. He voted to wait, to lay low, and not do anything that would antagonize the Romans in public until that time period, until the anger have passed. הם התנגדו למרד והעדיפו להסתגל למציאות ושלא להעריז פני השלטון ברבים, התגם בפני העם, תעלה בעידנה, סגיד לישוע בזמנו, ושב ממשלתו, השתחווה לו. They had a popular saying, says, when the wolf is around, stay inside, right? Don't antagonize him. Wait till he leaves. היכנע למי שהשעה משחקת לו, או שהשלטון בידו, כך כנראה חפש בן חנניה, שרבי ישמעאל היה קרוב לו, בדרך מחשבתו. This is a time when Hashem had decreed that the Romans would be in charge, just like before when the Babylonians were in charge, and that was God's decree, and we have to be in exile. That's part of the system. Look at the words of Rabbi Shmuel. It says, "Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe ve'Aaron v'savem b'nei Yisrael el Paro, sivam lehalok kavod lemalchut." Even when Moshe and Aaron went to Paro, they went to him and showed him respect, even though he was evil, even though he was enslaving them. And so too, we should do the same. And others, look how many other people also voted with Rabbi Ishmael to wait. And they might have even been the majority. However, sometimes a minority that's very vocal, that's very passionate, can come forth and break through and cause a rebellion, which is what happened there. And he ends, the third oath that Hashem gave is not to Bnei Yisrael, but rather to the other nations, that they should not be too strict and not too overbearing on Bnei Yisrael, even if they are decreed exile and decreed punishment, but that they should be sparing with their treatment of the Jews. So that's how he ends the chapter. And I think what we see here in all of these midrashim is these two voices who are really two pillars of the world. Two, you might say political parties or religious parties or understandings of Hashem's will in the world. They're fundamentally different, and their differences will trickle down to so many other issues. But then, at that time, when Bar Kokhba was ascendant, and he was successful for a good 2.5 years, they actually put up an amazingly good fight. They were able to mint their own coins with the name of Shimon Bar Kokhba on it, and it said Shana Aleph Lecherut Yisrael, Shana Bet, but there was no Shana Gimel, there was no third year. They put up an amazingly good fight. It took 1/3 of the entire Roman army and their best generals that they had to recall from other places that they were fighting to come to Judea to put down this rebellion by the Jewish people. Perhaps if they were better coordinated, perhaps if some other of the minorities had joined forces, maybe they could have won. I mean, it is within the realm of possibility. You might go back and say the same thing about the Maccabees. They had no chance against the Hellenistic Empire. They were small against a small group against the large one, and yet they did win. And Bar Kokhba, they remembered that and said, Hashem did it for us in the past, he can do it for us again. And so that was in their mind and in the mind of Rabbi Akiva. However, because of that tremendous failure, that was remembered for generations to come. And the advice of Rabbi Ishmael eventually is the one that won out. Even though in many other areas, for example, the approach to Midrashim and the approach to mysticism and the reasons for mitzvot and thinking of the nature of God and so many other things, Rabbi Akiva had won out. But in this political aspect, Rabbi Ishmael was the major advice for 2,000 years. Lay low, wait till it goes, and Hashem has his time. It's not up to us to decide when the Geulah will happen. We have to simply wait. And so with that in mind, we think, let's go back to that vote on May 12th. And they're sitting there for 13 hours trying to decide what it should be. And there's different versions of what actually happened on that day. But there's one man, his name is Zev Sharif. He was the first cabinet secretary from 48 to 57 and did many, many important things. He was there in that meeting, and he was one of the people taking notes. And in his book called 3 Days, he writes up his account of what happened in that meeting. And this was written at the time when the other people that were in the room were alive, and for that reason, it's at least somewhat trustworthy. And he says at the beginning of the meeting, a lot of the ministers were against declaring a state, and there was Ben Gurion who had to come and convince them. And even at the end of the meeting, after so much debate, there were still 4 ministers that held out, that did not agree with Ben Gurion. 4 ministers that said it's too dangerous. We should not, right? We should not declare war. The odds are against us. This could lead to a terrible massacre. This would be a terribly irresponsible move to make. They loved Israel. They were great Zionists, and precisely because of them, it said we have to protect ourselves, right? Let's wait, and one day when the time is right, it will happen. And I don't know if I was there. I think if a lot of us was there, I think that would be prudent and make a lot of sense. And that was ingrained in our mind. That's how we were trained for 2,000 years to think, right? Give in to the powers that be. However, Ben Gurion and the other 6 ministers that voted to declare a state, they had the spirit of Rabbi Akiva in them, and they had the sensibility to know that this is the time when Rabbi Akiva's advice is the one to go with, and so they did that. I think they realized that waiting is going to bring down the morale of the Jewish fighters and only give more time to the Arabs in the Arab states to increase their military, and they probably won't keep the truce anyway. And so they decided quite heroically to declare a state. And as Ben Gurion said, in Israel, to be a realist, you have to believe in miracles. And it's because of that belief, because although we've practiced like Rabbi Ishmael for 2,000 years, because we remembered the voice of Rabbi Akiva, and finally, this was the time when he said the Geulah is here. We have all the signs, and whatever calculations you make, right? This is the historical setup that we have at this moment in time. May not happen again for another 1,000 years or 2,000 years, and we have to take advantage of this opportunity. And while looking back, thankfully, with God's help, he was right. And now, 72 years later, we can celebrate our Jewish state. So, with
what was the vote, Rabbi?
What?
What was the vote?
So the vote was 6 to 4. 6 for declaring a state, and 4 deciding to wait. That's that version of it. The official notes of the time, which were confidential for some years, say that it was a unanimous vote. So historians debate what actually happened. My sense is that Sharif, who was there and published this beforehand, is the right one, is the historical one. And I think the official notes wanted to show that there was no debate on this. We all agreed, right? There's another version that said after the vote, Ben Gurion said, listen, the majority is with me. We're gonna vote for. Let's re-vote, and this time make it unanimous so that we can say it's unanimous, right? So my sense is that he wanted to go out and say it's unanimous. There was a second vote on that day. The second vote was very interesting. Was about whether they should declare a state with borders. should they say we are declaring a state and here are our borders, and should those borders be within the UN partition? The benefit of that would be that the UN and all the governments around the world that supported it recognized already a Jewish state within those borders. And so this would bring them immediate and easy international support. If they don't declare borders, then they're saying, you know, we're declaring a, first of all, does it legally make any sense to declare a state if you're not saying where your state is? And so there were lawyers there that said, it doesn't make any sense. You can't, it just doesn't, you can't do that, right? There's no logic. And other people that were afraid that if you don't declare borders, and the United States was pushing them to make sure to say that they were doing it within the UN Charter. And so if you don't declare borders, you may lose the support of the rest of the nations and antagonize the Arabs more, because now you're claiming more than the UN had given. And in that vote, it seems that 9 of the ministers wanted to declare borders and wanted to make the state within the UN Charter. Abba Ibn also wanted to. He said that was the best idea. Ben Gurion, however, was against it. He said, we don't know what the borders are going to be. Listen, if the Arabs had agreed to the UN vote, then fine, you know, we agreed to it. But now they didn't. So they're the ones that are changing the borders. And so he convinced the rest of them to leave the borders undeclared. And it'll be decided by war and by what happens in the future. And so he prevailed upon a lot of them. In the end, 5 people, ministers, agreed with Ben Gurion not to declare borders. 4 were against and 1 abstained. And for that reason, Ben Gurion said later that this was one of his greatest achievements in not declaring borders. And that way, Israel in the future would not be restricted by those borders that were only 55% of the land. And I think by the end of the war, they were in control of something like 78%.
It was tiny little pockets. If you look on the map that they provide, it's tiny little pockets, like almost like small communities.
Exactly, right. Exactly. And what became clear during the course of the war is that those would be indefensible when the villages, Arab villages all around, were attacking convoys. And so, you know, I think it's really just quite amazing to put ourselves back into their shoes. You know, we read a lot about the military history and just the amazing miracles that happened during the military fighting. But I think equally important are these political and philosophic decisions about when do you make a move and when do you hold back? When do you seize the day? And it's really this, we have training, we've been thinking about this for a long time in the 2 schools of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael.
Rabbi.
So I want to let me just end and I'll take the questions and comments. I just end with an expression of gratitude to the prime ministers and leaders of Israel from its beginning until today. And although they're from different points of view and different political parties, I think that is important because we need both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael, even the decisions that are coming up now and that will come up in the future. Both of these points of view, we have to always keep in mind and make sure to get the right balance. And that's why Chazal preserved both of them, so that we should think through each. And the second expression of gratitude to the soldiers, the IDF fighters, the Palmach, many of them our own community members who gave their lives so that we can have safety and prosperity in the state of Israel. And lastly,
Amen.
Gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all of his providence and miracles that he did in 1948 and continues to do for us and the Jewish people until today.